Welcome to Withdraw Consent. I'm Jack. Today I want to look at an interesting subject that came up in an episode, and it was a comment. It was one of the best comments I've ever received, and I want to take a look at it because it's a kind of a new idea that I haven't seen before. So basically, this episode came out where Jews expelled 109 times, and it came out 9 days ago from when I'm filming this. And so there's a comment here, FRJ Maudsley. Thank you for your care and accuracy and clear logic. But then he comes down here not too long later and he puts this enormous comment. And it's got some interesting ideas from a Catholic perspective that I haven't looked at before. So we're going to look at this. I didn't know that this was, I just thought this was somebody. But then when you go to the replies, it says, thank you for your clarity regarding this topic. Father, right? You go to his channel and he's Father James Maudsley. Now, if you go to his channel, he's got some interesting stuff here on Holocaust. If you're interested, I've already covered that stuff. You know, get a different view, you know, but it's similar. He's going to find similar conclusions. And I guess he was famous for activism in Burma and before he became a Catholic priest, and now he did. So this is really interesting stuff. Okay, so here's how the comment goes. While in the past, various cities and states have, as a matter of self-defense, resorted to, and that's defense because he's British, you know, spelled like that, resorted to expelling the Jews. Can I give a couple of reasons why I think this is no longer a possibility, and also what is needed instead? So, you know, here, if you didn't see this episode, we covered all the different times that the Jews got expelled throughout history and the 109 argument and stuff like that. So here's his first set of points here, okay? He says, it is unfair on recipient countries to expel the Jews. Why should any other place have to take them? Okay, now this is a good point. And I was talking to Victor about it. And when I think about this point, he is correct. It is unfair to expel them. Why should any other place have to take them? And the reason why I'm going to give that you still expel them is because I care about my children more than anybody else's children in the world. I don't want my kids trafficked, you know? And then your care starts expanding. And I care about human life all around the planet, but I don't care about the kids in the Congo as much as I care about my kids. I still don't want the kids in the Congo doing child labor, but I care about my kids more. Just I'm completely biased, you know? I love my children. And so anyways, then we go back and he says, his next point, it is especially stupid to expel Jews to Palestine, where they are committing genocide now, and they are seeking to inflame World War III, from which the Jews will seek global domination through an engineered peace settlement. They want Jerusalem as the world capital with a global police force. Any system of international law, which includes them, will be run by Jews for the oppression of the whole world. Okay, so he's factual here. They're committing genocide now. Factual, we've covered that. Seeking to inflame World War III, also factual. And then it's his opinion that they're going to seek global domination to an engineered peace settlement. That seems a reasonable opinion, right? I've never heard this. They want Jerusalem as the world capital with a global police force. I've never heard of that before. Any system of international law, which includes them, will be run by Jews for the oppression of the whole world. That sounds logical based on what we know. Whether it's stupid to expel them to Palestine or not, even all those things considered, I don't want them near my children. Third point, and a country which simply expels the Jews will find the Jews will never forget it, but spend decades or centuries plotting a psychotic revenge. Okay, now this is a good point because you look historically at what happened in Germany. Day one, the world Jewry began the boycott against Germany, right? And when I was talking to Victor about this, he said, who would win, the U.S. or the rest of the world? And I said, well, the rest of the world. Because it's just too much, you know, it's too much against you. We don't have the manufacturing stuff. And he said, well, if you look at what happened to Germany's economy from 1933 to 1939, insane. During the Great Depression, insane, right? Now imagine that happened to the United States economy because we've got all this terrible influence out, right? Now, this was his point. Now, who wins, the United States or the world? You know, and that's a good point. But no matter what, Father Maudsley makes a great point about them spending decades or centuries plotting a psychotic revenge. That's a good point. Now, we're going to get more into that, but now let's look at his solution, which is a Catholic solution. Very interesting, right? There is an alternative, which used to be standard in Catholic countries, called Sicut Judaeus Non. I don't know how to pronounce Latin, so that is what it is. So this is a very real thing. Okay, so I've got a reference below, and they want me to subscribe. And basically, it's just a reference. This is not by Father Motley. This is just something I looked up, right? And you can go check it out. All of these in italics are just quotes from it, from the different papal bulls, right? And then basically, if you look at the history of it, right? The first bull was issued in 1120, right? And then it just kept getting reaffirmed by future popes. I should make this a little bigger, shouldn't I? Here's all the different. So basically, we're looking at 1120 by Calixtus II, all the way up through Nicholas V in 1447. And the bull forbade Christians on pain of excommunication from forcing Jews to convert, which is a terrible idea, forcing Jews to convert. Forcing anybody to convert is a terrible idea. Forcing Muslims to convert, are they really converting? Or are they, from harming them, from taking their property, from disturbing the celebration of their festivals, and from interfering with their cemeteries, right? And so a lot of this stuff with this Sicut Judaeus Non was to protect Jews from violence because of the terrible practices that they had, like we saw in this episode here, the 109 Expelled, where I read you the Queen of Hungary quote about how they do all deeds that moral men don't do, and that's why they're being kicked out of the country, right? And so here's his alternative, right? Strip the Jews of all power and influence, make usury illegal and pornography, do not allow Jews to hold office, and protect the Jews from unlawful violence or molestation, protect their synagogues and places of worship, and their graveyards from desecration. Pray for their conversion. Start parentheses, it will happen in the end by an act of God as prefigured by St. Paul falling from his horse on the way to Damascus, end parentheses. Okay? So here's his solution here, right? I'm just going to finish this. And then we're going to discuss it, okay? Thus, every nation has to bear its burden of Jews. They have to be wise, not falling for Jewish traps and seductions through promises of fake credit or sexual depravity. They have to be civilized and restrained, not permitting pogroms against Jews, but dealing with problems lawfully. Pogroms are, killing in groups, okay? And then maybe, he says, not sure. First point, there are a lot of nationalists who see the problem, but I think miss the solution because a poor solution will backfire. Second point, there are a lot of Catholics who are in denial about the problem, but if they were awakened to it, ought to be easily won over to the traditional solution of Sicut Judaeus Non. Okay, so this last one is an interesting point because one of my emphasis is to wake up Christian Zionists, but from a Catholic's perspective, they already have a program of how to handle this. If they could just wake the people up, it would seem like one less step would be made to get to a solution, right? So when you look at this right here, strip the Jews of power and influence, make usury illegal and pornography. I mean, all this stuff's great, right? And I never thought about the pray for their conversion happening to end by act of God. I never thought about that part before. But basically, the problem I see with this part here is in this episode here. If you watched it, I scrolled through the list of all the countries that had expelled Jews, and I pointed out different ones that were like, okay, they were expelled here. 12 years later, they were expelled at the same place. They were expelled here. 20 years later, they were expelled at the same place. And I feel like even if you were in a monarchy and you were saying, okay, this king's like 21, he's going to rule for 40 years. If you do these laws, that's going to give you 40 years, right? If you're in a democracy, a particular democracy like the United States, constitutional republic, fine. And you make laws, you're only guaranteeing that those laws will be in place for 4 years if they're not thrown out as unconstitutional, And all of these things would be unconstitutional in the United States. So you could make these laws and they would be thrown out by the Supreme Court, right? And so the problem is, historically, when we look at it from this exact episode, even with expulsions, people aren't good at still keeping them out. I think there's less of a chance of keeping them out of power through this method. Now, historically, when this method was used, the popes could just do what they want, you know? And so it was a much lower bar to cross to get the things done that they were trying to do. Like what bar, I mean, how would you get these things done? You're talking about the Constitution would have to be wiped, you know? Or a constitutional amendment would have to be put in that say, hey, all the things that require that give equal protection don't give equal protection to one group of people. And then define that people. Now we're back to the Nuremberg laws of Germany. And I just, if I'm thinking about this is interesting to think about, right? If you could keep this as a thing in perpetuity, keep his solutions as a thing in perpetuity, then it's a great idea. What's your means of keeping them in perpetuity? And if you can't say that you can, and I cannot say that I can, unless it's like a full dictatorship or something, like China could do this. Russia could do this. I don't know about the future for Russia, but 20 years ago, Putin could have done this. I just don't see it as practical. And since other generations, the next generation always forgets. Like I was talking to my sister and she was saying like, her son grows up in a place that's 50% black. I would not do that. And he really likes black people. And the reason why is because his parents are just racist, right? And they're not even that racist. Because they didn't move out of the area, like for goodness sakes. And so he just thinks they're wrong and they're stupid. And then when the black guy pulls a gun on him because they're just robbing all the white kids, who are walking home from school, he's like, oh, well, maybe they were right. That's because each generation just forgets, if you're not currently being abused, it just makes your parents look like they're abusive, like the parents are the abusive ones, right? Because you're not being abused. And it just seems like expulsion it's just, in my opinion, and I talked to Victor about this too, he says expulsion, even with this in guard, because I don't see a means of implementation of this. In the past, you could see how it was implemented. Even expulsion wasn't successful in a lot of places. And even if you look at like, if you look at this, do you know what this reminds me of? It just occurred to me. This reminds me of National Socialist Germany. Let's go back to this. Look at this. Strip the Jews of all power and influence, make usury illegal and pornography, do not allow Jews to hold office, and protect Jews from unlawful violence or molestation, protect their synagogues and place of worship. Now, this was a failure during Kristallnacht, which I covered, and I could link that below if you haven't seen that episode. But the Germans failed in their duty to do this. They said they would, and they failed because of a stupid guy, and then Hitler backing him up. I condemned him in that video for that. Okay. And then, but if you think about it, they did do this because they didn't do forced expulsions. They did the voluntary program, which I covered. I'll put that video below too. It was a voluntary program where you could go to Palestine, and National Socialist Germany wasn't extreme enough to expel their Jewish population, which is interesting way to look at it, right? You would just, okay. Anyways, that's what I got for you. I think it's interesting to think about. I appreciate the comment. I'll just think more and more about it, but I think it's pretty interesting. Anyways, that's what I got for you. I'm putting a bunch of content over on Locals. It's not making it onto episodes, but just interesting stuff I find. Oh, hope you guys have a great weekend. See you next time.